The Dallas Cowboys have released their first depth chart of the season. What's our biggest takeaway? All that and more this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Leighton McCool. Check him out at McCoolBCB. Leighton, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm, first pod back in Studio Day McCool, as they would say.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be home, but I'm certainly there's tons still going on, and now I'm just part of the masses, right? Hopping on Twitter and consuming my Cowboys training camp notes. So
you're a peasant like the rest of us. But
that's right. Yeah.
All right, we got some Twitter questions to go through today. Cowboys also have a practice, I believe, today that we're gonna catch up on later. But before we do that, the Dallas Cowboys have released their initial depth chart going into the first preseason game. Leighton, I really, really try not to overreact here, but what are your thoughts to this depth chart?
I mean, without a doubt, the first thing I thought was they're listing three safeties as kind of a base defensive package.
Yeah, and if you're not with us on YouTube and you're listening to the audio version only, the Cowboys do have Jaron Kearse, Donovan Wilson, and Malik Hooker all as starters.
Yeah, and only two linebackers listed as the two linebacker positions listed as starters, with Leighton and Micah starting as those spots. I think it's pretty chalk, honestly. This is exactly who. Not only, I think the surprising thing to me is that they listed three safeties as the base package. Yeah. Not that it is the base package, because I think that's the best package. This collection of players is the best collection of defensive players that they can put on the field at once, I think. So I think, the names that are associated with the starting group on defense, at least, is not shocking so much.
No,
it's more just that they've listed that as the base defense. On the offensive side of the things, I think I'm not shocked they list Connor McGovern as the left guard starter. I mean, that to me is the real thing that everyone needs to not overreact to.
Yeah, because I think they did this last year with Micah Parsons. I think they listed Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch and Keanu Neal as the starters, and Parsons was like second string will linebacker.
Yeah, we have to remember that, again, technically they are still in the install phase, right? Like they're still dealing with getting things installed. And so I don't know that, competition for the spots has actually officially begun, even though it certainly has on some level. I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. The only other big takeaway for me is that Tristan Hill is I'm looking at the depth chart right now. So they've got basically two defensive tackle spots, and it's Neville Gallimore, Osa Odigizua, Quinton Bohanna, Carlos Watkins, and then Tristan Hill as kind of the fifth defensive tackle. It's a little surprising to me, Leighton.
Well, especially since what we've seen at camp is, him working with the first group whenever they do drills. It's not like we've seen Tristan Hill running with the threes a lot. I've seen him running with the ones a lot. So, I think, again, the arrangement of the names, the depth chart aspect of this is still very fluid. Honestly, I can't imagine a situation where Quinton Bohanna is ahead of John Ridgeway based on what I've seen in camp.
Yeah, and I think all the rookies are a little bit further down on the depth chart than what they will be, except for Jalen Tolbert, who the Cowboys list as a starter because they don't have another option, really, right?
Yeah, they've got all these guys in brackets indicating that
they're hurt, or that's where they would be. Yep.
Yeah. To me, the third wide receiver spot, I don't know. I feel like Noah Brown would actually be Michael Gallup's X backup, or Simi Folk, who could probably do X. So it's like,
probably.
Yeah. Again, I think it's hard to put a lot of stock into the way that the names are arranged right now.
The only thing that is interesting to me is the veterans, right? Like that's the only thing you can kind of have a takeaway here because the rookies are all going to play a lot. But like, for example, Sean McEwen ahead of Jeremy Sprinkle. That actually caught my eye. And it's not just because I love Sean McEwen, but like, is there a chance that Peyton Hendershot, who's a rookie, could he potentially beat out Jeremy Sprinkle? We've got Jake Ferguson, who is a 4th round pick at tight end, ahead of both of those guys. It seems that's the only one to me that's a little surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like overall, it doesn't. There's no cohesiveness to like the way this was arranged, right? Like, Ferguson
probably
seems to be
listed.
Yeah,
exactly. Take anything away from it. Basically, my guess, honestly, is they have an intern that just said, "Hey, we have to, by NFL rules, release a depth chart. Can you make one up real quick, just based on what you've seen at practice?"
I'm pretty sure that it's someone in the PR department that does it. So that just take that with the amount of grain of salt that's appropriate. So, yeah,
I mean, this is going to change so significantly before week 1 that it's almost not worth talking about anymore. So we're gonna move on.
Moving on.
Yeah, we're gonna move on and get to your Twitter questions because that's what you guys are really here for.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that, I want to tell you about BuiltBar. They've got an absolutely fantastic new product out there, cookie dough chunk puffs. They have a light, chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Got a little pro tip here for you. Stick them in your fridge. Let them get cooled down a little bit. They are absolutely fantastic that way. Again, covered in 100% real chocolate, real cookie dough chunks inside of them. You're going to love it. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15. And I believe if you buy 2 boxes, you can earn some rewards and you get an additional $5 back. That's what I did yesterday when I went and bought some. So make sure you check out the website, built.com. All right, let's get to some questions. A lot of people are wondering about Terence Steele because they're seeing clips of him being beaten in practice by Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Sam Williams. Are you concerned at all about Terence Steele?
I think there's some concern just because it's first year to try to be a starter full time, and I think that there's a transition there, and I don't think I'm nervous about him long term for the regular season because of these clips I've seen necessarily. I mean, I think first of all, one-on-one situations always kind of benefit the defensive line in those situations, always. Right? Because offensive line, it's just like the inverse of what happens with the defensive backs or the wide receiver one-on-ones. Defensive backs are used to having help; they work in tandem to defeat passing schemes. Offensive line does the same thing with pass protections. They work as a group to defeat attempts to try to come onto the quarterback. So I think that the thing to kind of take there is to see how he's moving, to see how he's reacting. And I've seen clips where he's handled those guys too, so it's not like, we tend to overreact to the bad beats, but we don't, it's not as flashy when Terence Steele gets in front of DeMarcus Lawrence and slows him down. Like that's not necessarily as much of a clip that's worth tweeting out. So I think you've certainly seen Steele getting beat, but I also think that Terence Steele is being beat by some guys that we're hoping to get 10 plus sacks this season, and in a situation that's difficult to defend. So I think that with Steele, we'll know more when we get to the regular season. He hasn't regressed. I know where he was. I mean, I know where he was at this point last year. And was it always perfect? Absolutely not. But I think it's going to be where it needs to be come week 1, and I think he's going to have a good season. And I'm not concerned about the position the right tackle position. Now we can talk about swing tackle and all that stuff if you want, but I'm not concerned about it long term.
I'm not concerned because listen, there's no game planning in these practices, right? No. You're not game planning for DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. The quarterbacks not game planning. I think Dak knows that this is a game. He can't hold the ball as long as he has in these practices, right? He gets rid of it as quick as possible. And then on top of that, you mentioned the one-on-one stuff. Like, if a pass rusher doesn't win a one-on-one, that's more concerning than a offensive tackle being beaten, right? Those drills just so heavily favor the defense that I don't think we can take too many takeaways away from it. It's just, I'm not concerned yet at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, look, I mean, I don't know that there's going to be a world in which Terence Steele is going to be, they're going to be doing 5-man protection situations where Terence Steele is going to be going one-on-one against the defensive end every single snap. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's just not how pass protection works. Sure. So, I think you take it, you view it. But again, I think it goes back to that idea of what we talked about where you kind of have to consume this stuff correctly, right? You don't take it as the 10,000-foot view on the player. You look at the individual techniques he's using and how is he looking? How is he moving? How are his feet? How are his hands? Did DeMarcus Lawrence just get him because he's really good? And,
exactly.
So I think those are all things that you need to kind of factor in when you're looking at this stuff.
All right. Really good question here from Goran. He wants to know, when it comes to evaluating a player in the preseason, which do you put more emphasis on? A good week of practice or a good performance during the game itself?
They're different things. I think it's part of the evaluation. I don't know that it's a 1-for-1 comparison, but I think you watch them during the week to confirm that they can consistently do it, right? And to me, doing it in the preseason is kind of the equivalent of, okay, we've seen that you can do it. Now, can you take it to the game? So, it has to be both, especially for a young player. It has to
be both. It can't be one or the other. Like, let's do examples of both, right? This guy's getting way too much pub with the podcast, but John Vea Johnson dominated training camp for like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And he got to the game and it was just too big for him, right? Like, he had drops, he was making mental mistakes, he had a fumble on a punt return. You could tell like it was just too fast for him. Yeah. And then there's other guys like Ben Bass, this is from a while ago, or Kev Bishop, where these guys are flashing in the preseason, but there's just no consistency at all in training camp. And that gives you no confidence that they can repeat what they did on a random Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, you're trying to triangulate this information. You're not trying to just see it once necessarily. I mean, I think people get messed up by that whole idea of the scouting term of, if you see it once, then you can do it. I think that's a solid, sound idea, but that's not how you determine if a guy is going to have long-term consistent success. I think that determines if the guy has the ability to play in this league. And I think what we're seeing with situations like this is that, there are circumstances that happen in games. Like, Ken Bishop gets into the field against the fours, and he works really well and it flashes, but there's a lack of context when we just see player X shining in a preseason game and they haven't played well against their equivalents during training camp all week. So you need both. You need to do one and then the other. If you do one or the other without the other, it's still pretty suspect, right? Like if you show up in the games, then it can be a situation. Is he a gamer or is it a guy that just flashes and isn't, consistent? That guy's not necessarily going to be someone that you want to carry on the team. And so I think you want to see both. And it's not necessarily about weighing one over the other. It's about seeing them do one and then do the other.
Yep. I agree. It's got to be, for me, you need to put together like 3 good weeks of training camp, right, to really start getting excited about some of these guys. We're in week 2 right now. I think by next week, we'll have a pretty good feel, like who's for real, who is maybe just a camp star, who had a nice week of practice. We'll see. All right, next one from Mark. How is Leighton Vander Esch looking? It sounds like he's having quietly a nice camp.
He is. He's had a really nice camp so far. He looks spry and moving around really well. He's gotten his hands on footballs. Like, obviously the tip pass, it was a pick 6 for Jerron Kearse in 11s the other day. I think the mojo moment, if I'm not mistaken. And just in general, he's, I've noticed him getting to his spot quick, causing TFLs. he's always been assignment sound. I think that's never been an issue. There's been health issues at times. I think there's also been issues at times when he doesn't get help up front, and he doesn't get offensive lineman being occupied by his defensive lineman. And I think
he's not really a guy that takes on and sheds blocks particularly
for a guy his size. For a guy his big, that's not necessarily his game. And we talked about it when he came out. He didn't necessarily get taught to stack and shed. He got taught to run through. Basically run around blocks to get where he needs to go. He's a guy that arrives where the ball carrier is supposed to be, and he uses his long, big arms and broad shoulders to wrap up ball carriers so they can't escape. That's kind of his game. So I think we've seen a lot of good stuff there. We've seen a lot of good stuff in coverage with him, with his drops and maybe not necessarily one-on-ones, though he hasn't been terrible there either. I think he's had a good camp. I'm excited to see what we get out of him. The more I see of him, the more it feels like if we're putting, his rookie season on the far end of the good and then his second season on the far end of the bad, I would say he's very, very much closer to the rookie season than he is to the bad season right now.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see another all-pro type of season from him. But could we have another year, like the second half of the season? Can that kind of be what we see all year long in 2022? I think it's possible. It seems like, I don't want to be the body doctor or anything here, but seems like he's in better shape than he was at this time last year. I think he's been able to work out a little bit more, and I think he's in for a nice season. All right. Another question here from Mike. What position of what excess do we have at a certain position that might be intriguing to other teams?
Corner.
I thought about corner. Here's the problem with corner. You are right. That's the position to highlight. I'm not so sure that the guys that they could trade have a lot of.
You're not getting like, that's the thing, is that I don't know that there's a position anywhere where you're so deep at like starter level quality that you have like an extra player that you would rather have an asset for, right?
Well, I think corner is one of those. The problem is the two guys that you could theoretically trade, I don't know if the NFL wants, right? Like Kelvin Joseph. Kelvin Joseph had a lot of issues kind of coming into the league with, he kind of got kicked off two different teams, and then he's had this legal thing. You're not going to get the value back for him that you would need, right?
No.
Nahshon Wright, another guy who most teams had as a late day 3 grade on, he only fits a couple schemes in the entire NFL. So while those guys are really good depth pieces for you, I'm just not sure if they make sense for most of the other teams in the league that might have a need.
Yeah, I think it's a case where they're probably more valuable to you than they are to trade. Like you're not going to get the quality of value that you want out of the trade, and it certainly won't be worth having the depth, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's probably more valuable in that case. And outside of defensive back,
maybe defensive tackle. Like, I don't know if there's a market for like a Quentin Bohanna, right? Because that's a 6th round nose tackle that you draft.
We got a lot of kickers, so.
None of them are good, but we do have a lot. We got
a lot of them.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, wide receiver could be a position where you could trade a body, for like a late round pick if everyone just continues to shine, but probably not. Those are the kind of positions that have like numbers, right, of quality players. They don't necessarily have like I think cornerback's the closest thing you have to depth, but also depth at the top, where like you could trade away a starter type player.
The only other position that I would say is maybe at defensive end, right? Like I could see a team that's had some injuries being like, let's flip a 6th round pick for Terrell Basham. He's got a good contract. He's an NFL player. We just need a body. And the Cowboys could be like, you know what? We already got Lawrence. We've got Dorrance Armstrong. We got Parsons. Sam Williams has looked good. Dante Fowler's looked healthy. They've got Chauncey Golston. That's a spot that I could see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Again, I think it's tough because we still need to see some of these younger guys develop before anyone's going to feel comfortable trading anybody like that. Yeah. But yeah, I do think that those are the positions where, you have a high number of quality bodies, maybe not a high number of quality starters.
And maybe one of the reasons why the Cowboys could trade somebody like Terrell Basham is because of an undrafted free agent that has been a little bit surprising in camp. We'll talk about that guy in just a second. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Dave. Listen, there's times in our lives where something happens and we need some help. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That is more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There is no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and you need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That is DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. All right, Leighton, let's talk about some undrafted free agents because there's been a couple that have caught the eye of Mike McCarthy, caught the eye of us. So I'm gonna go with this question here. If I set the total at 2.5 undrafted free agents making the 53-man roster, how would you go?
That's the number, I think.
I feel like Marquise Bell is a lock, right? The safety.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably true.
Dennis Houston.
Yeah, and then we keep hearing that Hendershot has a real shot to make the team.
That's 3.
That's 3 right there. So, and that's not including some of the other folks that may surprise us, like Isaac Taylor.
We should mention Mike Tafua, who Mike McCarthy actually talked about today. He was very impressed. He said he's kind of caught the eye of everybody on that side of the ball. We'll see.
John Owning is jumping up and down with excitement right now.
Dontae Drummond.
Wide receivers it's just there's just too many of them that are doing well. So I don't know. I mean, he so far has looked good, but I think it's also it's a lot of competition right there for him and what spot he's competing for.
Jonathan Garby or however you say his name, the kicker.
More like Gonby. No, thank you. No, I don't think so.
No, but this is a good UDFA class for the Cowboys. I think there's going to be at least 2. I think 2 is a lock to make the roster.
Yeah, I would take the over.
I think as many as 4 could potentially make this roster, especially if they do, have a trade like Basham going away to open up a spot for Tafua, or if they keep, Alex Lindstrom or James Empey, one of the interior offensive linemen there. Wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the positions that they could potentially look at a trade for is what if they traded Connor McGovern because they like Matt Farniak or let's say they like Farniak a lot, right? They trade McGovern because I think is he in the last year of his deal?
Last year of his deal. Yep.
So he could trade McGovern, maybe get something decent for him, give Farniak an opportunity to be that swing interior guy. And then in that case, you elevate someone like MP or Lidstrom to possibly make the team as well. So, I think 2.5, I'm banging the over, I would say.
I would as well. All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. Now, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast and make that your second listen. Find the intellectual fantasy expert, Vinny Iyer, who brings over 20 years of NFL experience and unique angles to give you the moves that no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football. You can follow our show, the Locked On Cowboys podcast, wherever you get podcasts. Check us out over on YouTube. We put up shows every single day over there. You can follow Landon at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. And we'll see you guys next time.